Going on? This is Mark Bruce with Fit Train Performance. And today, what I want to talk about is this idea of a basketball calendar for you athletes out there, specifically basketball players. This is a conversation I've had with a lot of teams, a lot of athletes, a lot of parents, a lot of coaches. And I just want to give you a visual as far as how we look at those ebbs and flows with a basketball player's calendar and how we will implement various training modalities, various intensities, and how we kind of display it and how it makes sense to why you should train all year round. So if you see this calendar, and what I try to do is highlight like the season and then also take into account AAU, right? AAU is going to be a part of a basketball player's yearly calendar because, right, for some environments, areas like mine, AAU is a great time and a great place for kids to get exposure, right? To get looked at by higher level coaches and to be given different opportunities, which you may not get during your high school season. And kids like it, parents like it, coaches like it, so it's going to be there. So we have to factor it in. So if we look at this calendar from September until August, and then we think August is going to roll into September, so we have this cycle, right? In my area, the basketball season starts in November, right? It's about the first or second week in November, and it's going to go roughly 5 or so months. So we have November, December, January, February, March, and depending on your team, depending on your level, you could play, somewhere between March and April for what we call sectionals or playoffs or whatever it might be. Right? So that's the meat and potatoes of the year because that's the season, right? That's where you're going to win championships. That's where coaches may, they may see you during the AU season, but then want to watch you play during your season, how you work with your teammates. And then from March to April, right, that's going to be a little ebb and flow. And then AAU season begins in May. And, a lot of times it goes through July and then may end in between July and August. But we do have camps. And if you notice on the bottom, what I did is we have this baseline, right? That's going to be homeostasis. That's going to be, an athlete's, they're not overstressed, they're not understressed. And this is how we're going to relate it to that training effect. Right, so if we look at September to November, that technically should be that preseason training. And if you look, what I like to look at my athletes is during that time, they should be training 2 to 4 times per week. And you notice this line, see this little curve? That's identifying the intensity of that training. And if you look it up here, we have intensity. Down here, we have low intensity. So you see that we don't just start at the peak of intensity, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have an athlete that does the hardest movement, lifts the heaviest, does everything at a high level, and then they peak too early and they hit the season and all of a sudden they're getting some knee, ankle, hip, whatever it might be, discomfort in their body. So we want to see this nice linear progression. And if we look at how it begins September, October to November, we go from 2 days a week, potentially 3 days a week, and then we hit 4 days a week leading right until the basketball season, because now we can see that trajectory. We can see that linear progression to help those athletes achieve their goal. And the one thing I want you to notice when we look at August, notice how it's low. August is low because that's where we want these athletes to take a break. Take a break from the last 2 weeks of August leading into the beginning of September, where now we start to intensify. Now we rebuild the engine. Now we've put things together here in August, and that's where we're training 2 times a week if you're dealing with knee pain, hip pain, back pain, and we start to rebuild that engine. And it trickles into the season. And you notice in the season, right, we don't just cut off, right? We don't just stop lifting, training, preparing the body, right? We will hit that peak maybe December, and then we really decrease the intensity because we want to peak come playoff time. We want to be at our best, so we don't want to be overstressing the body in avenues that we don't need to. So this is where we may go from training 3 to 4 times a week, then we drop to 2 times a week during the season, and then once we get until February, where you're really playing a lot of basketball, your body's starting to break down to a certain degree because you're practicing, have a lot of competition, then we go to 1 to 2 times a week in that maintenance mode, and now we really decrease that intensity during playoff time. So now we're balancing with what the season does. It beats up an athlete's body, right? But with that training, we can prevent any longer lasting injuries. And the big area where I don't see athletes doing is right this March to April, there's no recovery. It just zings right up to intensity again. They lift really hard. They're in AAU knee deep. They're not recovering. They're not taking time away from the sport. So that March to April times frame is going to be super important to you should be at a lower intensity, right? You shouldn't be lifting too heavy as March hits. And as you get to that low intensity, now you start to rev it up again, leading into that AAU season where things are really picking up. So this is where, like I said, we go from 4 times a week to 2 times a week to once a week to then start to ramp it up 2 to 3 times a week. And right before you start hitting hot and heavy with the AAU season and those tournaments, you get up to 4 times a week, really getting that body to play at a higher level again, because you want to be able to show up for those AAU tournaments and manage and last and not have that, knee pain. The one thing I don't want to see is an athlete getting knee pain, tweak their ankle in May, and they grind through a long AAU season, then August hits, and they're all excited and revved up for basketball to begin in November, and they never take that time off. So if you allow yourself to recover, rebuild the engine, do the little things of building up the posterior chain, strengthening the tendons, that's going to help lead you to have a good AAU season. But again, you notice from the training perspective, we intensify until maybe early to mid-June. And then once you start hitting into the July area where AAU really ramps up, we start decreasing that amount, that intensity in the weight room to maybe 2 times a week, to balance with the traveling, to balance with the increased practice time, to balance with the increased games, and then we factor in camps too. And then we start to continue to decrease once end of July hits and beginning of August, and then we slowly ramp back up. Okay, so questions that I've had for dads and for coaches is what should we be doing? Well, everyone wants to run faster, everyone wants to be stronger, everyone wants to be a better athlete, but you can't do it all year round. So the last 2 weeks of August, the first week of September, that should be your time to slow down with the intense athletic things and work on, some stationary ball handling, work on some jump shots, but build that engine up. More hypertrophy, more isometrics, building up that engine again, because AAU season is a long season. And then that second week of September, now you start kicking it into high gear, really preparing the body to perform at a high level, and that should fill in nicely to the start of basketball. So I hope that breaks things down as far as what that basketball calendar can look like and how you can really prepare from start to finish of not only the basketball season, of the year, because you're going to notice that's going to help you be way more successful and perform at a higher level, not only during your basketball season, but also during the AAU season, because that's going to happen regardless, right? You're going to want to play in AAU. It's going to be there. But you also want to know, how do I manage my training? You can't lift 4 days a week all year round. Okay, you can't squat for 3 to 5 reps or try to jump as high as you can and do some, Vertimax depth drop movements all year round. So we think of, when can I add those in so I don't get hurt but maximize those results? Thanks for tuning in. I hope that helped. If you like this, comment, subscribe, share with a coach, share with a teammate, and I appreciate you tuning in. So take care, and I look forward to seeing you soon.